morning, everyone. Welcome to the Virginia City Council chambers. This is a regularly scheduled committee of the whole meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, September 17th. The time is 9 a.m. Before we move on with the council, just want to clarify, I misspoke when I indicated that we would bring this preliminary levy to the council meeting for final approval. We did approve it today, and a special meeting we're authorized to do that, so we did approve the resolution today, so it doesn't have to go to the council. So it is set at 8% moving forward. So I apologize for the confusion, the error in my statement earlier. So we have a very full agenda today. We have presenters today, so I ask everybody's patience moving forward. And so we will turn this part of our agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is Paul Christensen from People Service to update on the wastewater treatment plant chemical feed study.
Thank you.
Green means go. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Paul Christensen, People Service, here to update you. At the wastewater plant, we have been looking at a couple of products for removal of phosphorus. We had been using a Neo Solutions product, and that had a concern. There was a price concern. So the cost per year was a real concern to the council and to the operations staff out there. And so we started working with Hawkins Chemical on an AquaHawk product that resulted in significant savings. The difference between the two products, however, is that the Neo Solutions is good to 40 degrees below Fahrenheit, and the AquaHawk product is only good to -3. So after both products do the job satisfactorily, there is significant savings with the AquaHawk product, but because of its freezing point, what we have decided is going to be the best option for the city at this time is to switch back and forth between the two chemicals seasonally. There is a cost estimate that was produced by your engineering firm, SEH, and what we found was that to take the belts and suspenders approach, to make sure that we would not have any problem with the AquaHawk that froze at -3, we would have to spend approximately $250,000 on the piping under the ground, and then we would have to also update your bulk storage. And we looked at multiple different areas. We looked at, well, if we didn't update your bulk storage and just did the piping, we could take smaller deliveries of the AquaHawk product. But long story short, we truly believe that your best option after meeting with the city administrator, SEH, People Service, and Jim Rosvit is that the best option moving forward is to swap seasonally. We will not spend any money on capital. We will not do any upgrades at this point. We will use all of your existing equipment, and all we will do is switch back and forth between products. You should still see savings in excess of $50,000 per year. And that is our recommendation moving forward. I can get into more of the meat and potatoes if you like, but.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Christensen. I'll go around to the council. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. About how many months a year will we be using the more expensive product?
We're looking at about somewhere between 3 and 4 months.
Okay.
And it'll be based a lot to do with, we'll have to be careful how we time our deliveries so that we run out of the AquaHawk. We want to run out of AquaHawk about mid-December to late December. So then we bring in the RE300 when we have those coldest months out of the year. We're hoping that we can get by with just a 90-day window to minimize the volume of that product we have to buy.
And if for some reason we have a fluke late November freeze spell, what's the potential downfalls of this?
But it's going to have to get to -3 before we have any issues at all.
Okay.
And we do have heat tracing that was installed for the pilot study that we did in March. So we could turn on the heat trace that is already existing and get us by for a few weeks, I think, without too much concern. And we can always, as operators, we can find different ways to dose the products in as well. But again, we are quite confident in this approach that we should not have freezing issues of the products in your chemical feed lines.
I appreciate that you've thought about that, and there's kind of a backup plan. I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate the duo looking at it differently than any of us thought about in this room about doing both of them. So I'm very supportive of this, and I thank you and Matt for all your work and the city staff for making this most efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Yeah, the best ideas did come to the top of the best idea got on the table when we met as a group, when we brought the operators, the engineers, and the city staff together, as well as the city administrator. And that is where we really just kind of looked at all the different options, and with the different viewpoints that were in the room at that time is when we came to this solution that we have before you today.
So, Mr. Christensen, I have two questions. First, well, actually, it's a statement, and please correct me if I'm not accurate. So the purpose of this is to use both these chemicals. Both of them are effective, one to -3, the other to -40. And so by using this combination based on the seasons, they'll prevent us to have to do any capital improvements or any other construction in there to alleviate or to protect the chemicals moving forward. So this is just a swap of one chemical to the other based on weather conditions with no additional cost to the city with respect to capital improvements. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor. There will be no capital expenditures. We'll just switch chemicals. So it'll just be a change in chemical pricing.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Motley, do you have a question? Then we'll go back to Councilor Johnson.
Thank you for coming, and I appreciate the information. I'll be supporting your recommendations. Just random question. Is there a downfall for us not supporting the more expensive option? I think you guys called it alternative number one.
Is there a downfall for not to go with the more expensive option?
Yeah.
The money,
Well, yeah.
the capital expenditure, and then, to invest in the infrastructure at this time. We've also there's a nitrogen limit that's that will be coming into play here with your wastewater plant. It's a little early in the game to fully have evaluated how that's going to impact you, but at some point in the future, it will impact you. We will have a nitrogen limit that will force us into an upgrade at the facility. Your facility is not designed to meet nitrogen. So another issue that we considered was we don't want to spend up to $500,000 right now to upgrade your facility so we can feed this different product because of its freeze point, and then find out that all that money we spent is now in the way of the next upgrade, and we throw it out. So that's why another reason we looked at, let's not spend the capital. We'll just spend a little bit more on chemical each year and not put the capital investment into the facility now, especially if that investment could potentially be lost in the future. You wouldn't get, not get the return on that investment.
Sure, thank you. Do you have just an estimate on a possible time frame on when we might be looking at a situation going forward, pending us approving the alternate number 2 option here? Number 2.
Could you clarify the question for me just a little bit? As far as the number 2 option is,
Well, with you saying we're going to have probably issues going forward and us not wanting to, maybe I'm overthinking this, and I should just let it die and just.
well, so as far as not making the capital investment, switching back and forth seasonally between chemicals, that we will be doing in December. That's the timeline for that. Is the end of December, we will switch back to the Neo Solutions, and then I would suspect come March, we'll be switching back to the AquaHawk. And then we'll just continue to do that seasonally. Each fall and spring, we'll make a switch in chemicals.
So this potentially could last several years on the future recommendation going forward before we possibly need capital improvements?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
This will be ongoing
Okay.
continuum until we have to make a capital improvement for another issue at the plant.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson, and then we'll go to Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Johnson.
I will move to approve the hybrid chemical seasonal switch plan at the wastewater treatment plant.
I'll support for further
Okay, moved by
discussion.
Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
Councilor Freely, is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich?
You just, and you may not have the answer to this one. When we talk about the future with the nitrogen, would that be an unfunded mandate?
Well, we'd have to seek funding from other sources, particularly through the legislature who funds wastewater treatment plants and the federal government as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Freely.
Just out of curiosity, have you talked to any other facilities regionally that are or have done what you're doing? Like, is this a proven method of alternating between the solutions where there haven't been issues, or is this a novel idea for our local facility?
Your extremely low phosphorus limit of 0.07 puts you in a position of leadership for the most part. You're in front of the majority of the state of Minnesota. There are some other, like Detroit Lakes and a few other communities. I'm not sure what their solution was, but again, we've done the pilot studies here, and we've used both, and we've gone beyond pilot studies, and we've fully implemented both of these products already. The AquaHawk is fully implemented today.
So it's proven in our own facility
It is proven in your facility, yes.
over the course of the entire seasons.
The AquaHawk is not proven over the course of a winter when the temperatures get below three below. And they have stated that's in their specification sheet for the product that it will freeze at -3. So we've done all the research and, here we were using it all summer long. We've been using the AquaHawk. It's performed well. Our feed rates are up a little bit right now compared to what they were earlier, just because our influent concentrations are up for some reason. But both products have been proven to work here successfully at your facility. The Neo has been proven to work over the course of a winter. So we know that works in the wintertime, we know it works in the summer, and we know AquaHawk works in the summer.
And I do appreciate you looking into a novel, answer to what we were concerning ourselves with, which was not having to invest in the capital infrastructure. So I appreciate the work you've done, Paul.
Right, and again, that's credit to the group that met, that came with that solution. It wasn't any one individual.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Christensen. We are not looking forward to the unfunded mandate for nitrogen. We'll deal with that when the time comes. But this is a prudent move moving forward. And thank you, staff and the collaborative, for coming up with this cost-saving measure to still maintain the health and safety of our wastewater treatment plants. So thank you, Mr. Christensen. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Item number 2 is Tom Kelly to discuss the fiscal year 2023 audit.
Good morning, Mr. Kelly.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me. My name is Tom Kelly. I'm from Walkerton, Honey. I'll be taking over your account from Greg and Devin. So this is a very formal introduction, if you will, to you. But I appreciate the time having me come in to go over the 23 audit with you. I do have some handouts. If you want to follow along, that's the ticket there.
If I may, Mr. Kelly, as we pass these around for stuff, I just want to cut to the meat of the chase for me, for particular,
Sure.
with respect to the summary of prior audit statement of finding, and I just want to make it. This is for me personally, is that due to the number of personnel within the city's business office, segregation of accounting functions necessary to ensure adequate internal accounting control is not possible. That's why I think we need to add in that additional person back into finance. So being said, please continue with your audit. Thank you.
Yes, no, of course. Thank you, Mayor. With that, that's a good example of how I like to have these presentations. I think the
I think the conversation and discussion is more valuable than listening to me drone on about numbers. So please, inflect, interrupt. You can save questions to the end, but if you have them as we go, I feel like that's where we get the most out of these sorts of conversations and meetings. Sherry, Britt, if you have anything to inflect as I go, please hop in. Yeah, I think the informal way is the way to go. Just a little bit about myself quick. So I've been at the firm since 2010. I've been a partner since 2017, and local governments and nonprofit auditing is my focus. So I'm really looking forward to working with you guys going forward. So, okay. With that being said, we'll go to page 2 of the packet, which is the audit results, where we give our opinion on your financial statements. This is a summary of pages 2 through 4. Of course, there's 3 pages of jargon to sum up what can be said on the second paragraph of the first page of that, in which we give a clean opinion to your financial statements. That's the highest level of assurance, the best opinion that we can give. That means that your financial statements are fairly stated and useful to the reader. It's not a reflection of the financial health per se, but it's that all material adjustments were made, the books will be useful, and you can lean on them to make decisions. So that sums that up. If we flip to the next page, and actually I'm going to have pages 3 and 4 kind of side by side here as I talk about this. This is a summary of the fund financials, what would be the balance sheet in the corporate world for your governmental funds. Now we've got 3 tables here. Cash balances, I always like to talk about cash. This middle table of due to and due from other funds, and then the bottom table is fund balances or equity. We're going to talk about the cash balances and due to and due from other funds together because they're related in this situation here, and I will be talking about fund by fund as we go too. So it's also important just to kind of give you an idea of how I like to go about this. I just summarizing here what I think are the important parts. That doesn't mean there's something else that we can't talk about. If there's another item in the audit that anybody wants to talk about, or as we go, please bring it up. These are just the parts that I think are most useful, okay? Okay, so cash balances and due from other funds. Starting at the very top, general fund, you'll see the top line, a sharp decrease from 22 to 23 in the cash balances. But now we're going to hop down to that middle table, the due to, due from table, and you'll see the 2023 balance of 3.5 million versus 1.8 million the year before. So they inversely, the cash decrease has an inverse relationship with the due from other funds. Big word early in the morning, apologize for that. But general fund cash then, essentially, it did decrease, but a large part of that is because of the due from other funds. It's borrowing to other funds that have a negative cash balance because you cannot present cash negatively by fund in the financial statements. Very standard. I can't think of many local government audits that don't have this sort of situation. But it just can kind of be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not reflective of what the actual cash balance is in the general fund if you were to run a report from your software effective 12/31/23. So that's general fund there. Again, cash down, due from other funds up. Moving to the ambulance special revenue fund, you'll see that there's no cash reported there due to the negative nature of it. And then if you go to that middle table again, you'll see a 1.79 million of due to other funds, so general fund and other governmental funds, that reflects that negative cash balance. That did increase from the prior year, about 600,000. Similarly, for the ITMEX Special Revenue Fund, same situation there. 3 million due to other funds, which would be general fund and other governmental funds, compared to 2.2-ish the year before. Okay, so now Public Safety Center. That one you see probably, I think it is the largest change in numbers in this whole handout. Cash going from 132,000 to 22 million. That's because of the unspent bond proceeds that you received in 2023 for the project, which obviously did preliminarily start in '23. But I'm reminded by the detour I have to take every day coming into town that you guys are in full swing of that right now. So you'll see that cash balance go down in '24 as that money is spent on the project. So again, that's probably the biggest shift in dollars here in the whole handout. Excuse me. Other governmental funds, cash went up about $570,000 from 6.6 to 7.2 million. And also other governmental funds are borrowing some to the funds with negative cash as well. Not as much as the prior year, but still borrowing 1.3 million to those with negative cash, which is depicted in that middle table at the very bottom. Then we get to fund balances in the bottom table. So, I talked about cash. As the saying goes, cash is king. So I always like to talk about how much cash each fund has. And we hit on due from other funds. But there's a lot more that go into evaluating the health of a fund than just cash and due from other funds, such as receivables, payables, et cetera. Your assets less liabilities essentially is what you have left over, which would be your equity or fund balance in these cases. So we look at general fund. That fund balance decreased from about 4.3 million to about 3 million. Excuse me. Ambulance special revenue fund decreased from about 500,000 to 1.1 negative. ITMEC went from 2.2 negative to 3.2. Again, that cash influx in the Public Safety Center Capital Projects Fund is reflected not only in the cash area, but in the fund balance area. Went from 1.4 balance to 23.3 million. And other governmental funds showed an increase as well, going from 8.8 million to 9.1 million, which is very comparable to the prior year. Is there any questions on the fund financials for the balance sheet purposes of the governmental funds? Okay, we'll keep going. So pages 5 and 6 then, if you look at these side by side, is what I'm going to do here. We went over some of the highlights of the balance sheet, and then the question is, all right, how did we get there? This is the revenues and expenditures, fund transfers in and out. Beginning balance sheet, plus or minus revenues and expenditures, gets to your ending balance sheet, essentially. So that's what we have depicted here. Starting at the top, well, we've got three tables here again: revenues, expenditures, and fund transfers. Again, I'm just going to hit the highlights on some of these now. General fund, revenues. Property taxes and intergovernmental revenues, those are your heavy hitters there. Very typical for a local municipality. Your intergovernmental revenues, of course, would be examples of LGA, taconite aids, police and fire aids, grants, that sort of thing. Property taxes, self-explainable. Those are your largest general fund revenues. Both of those increased, particularly intergovernmental revenues from the prior year. You had solid increases to both police and fire aids, as well as IRRB grants that were recognized in the general fund. You also saw an increase to other revenues, primarily with investment earnings. And if anybody's been following the markets since 2020, everybody knows that that's been a probably better roller coaster than anything that got at Valley Fair. So you went from a very poor year in 22 to a very positive year in 23. That really boosted those other revenues, that other revenues line item. Excuse me. So that brings us to the Ambulance Special Revenue Fund, where, sorry, I can't get this frog out of my throat. Revenues were very stable there. 2.9 million in 22, 2.9 million in 23. Slight decrease, but immaterial. ITMEC Special Revenue Fund, revenues went from 637,000 to 784,000. That's a 23% increase. So we'll talk about the budget next, and while that is low compared to the budget, you're trending in the right direction there with that. I don't know what projections look like, but you're moving in the right direction. Same with expenditures, which we'll get to here in a minute. So that's important to note, I think. Moving on, the Public Safety Center Intergovernmental revenues, which presumably would be grants that you recognized in that fund. I'd imagine you've have more, even though that's probably primarily bond funding the project for 2024 going forward with the influx in cash that you had. But that's explaining those revenues. And then other governmental funds, also property taxes and intergovernmental revenues carrying the load there. Very comparable to prior year, slight decreases, but an increase to other revenues in your other governmental funds. Moving to expenditures then. General fund, you spent 2.7 million more in 23 than in 22, going from 15.6 to 18.3. All departments had increases, as well as capital outlay that was recognized in the fund. So in 2022, 668,000 of capital outlay was recognized, where in 23, 1.9 million was recognized. That alone makes up, I believe, about half of that increase. So that's something something noteworthy in my opinion. Ambulance Special Revenue Fund, expenditures increased about 400,000 there from the prior year, going from 3.4 million to 3.8. ITMEC Special Revenue Fund, expenditures went down 388,000. So that's a 12% decrease. Again, trending the right direction to where you want to be. Public Safety Center, you spent 2.3 million in that fund. 2.1 million of that was capital outlay that will be capitalized for the project. And then again, of course, that was spent out of primarily those bond proceeds of 23.6 million that you received in 2023. Fund transfers, only a couple things here I want to bring up. There's a transfer from the general fund to the ITMEC Special Revenue Fund of $1 million to help with the operational purposes of that. And then there was a transfer in to the Ambulance Special Revenue Fund. I believe you took out a certificate of indebtedness to purchase the ambulance. So that ambulance, dollar for dollar, was purchased with the proceeds from that. That came from a debt service fund into the Special Revenue Fund to purchase that. That's what I have there. Any questions on any of that? Okay, now page 7 of the handout, reflected on pages 73 through 75 of the audit. This is your budget to actual analysis for general fund and major special revenue funds. The general fund brought in 1.2 million more in revenue than was budgeted, spent 1.2 million more than what was budgeted. So those kind of wash each other out, the revenues and expenditures above budget. The one difference that kind of resulted in that decrease that we talked about earlier was there was 2.1 million in debt proceeds budgeted in general fund that was not recognized. So that's the revenues and the over budget, expenditures over budget kind of net each other out, but the proceeds for the debt that was budgeted in the fund was not recognized in the fund, resulting in a decrease there. Ambulance Special Revenue Fund, revenues were under budget by about probably 9%, but you're talking $3 million versus 3.2 actual to budget, so not too bad there. Expenditures, you spent less, 3.8 million versus 4 million budgeted, and then there were 758,000 of other financing sources. I believe most of that was fund transfers budgeted to the ambulance fund, but only the 252 that I mentioned previously was transferred in. So that's your budget variance there. Then the ITMEC Special Revenue Fund revenues, you'll see that those are significantly excuse me, under budget, but I believe it was purely a budgeting, the $1 million transfer from the general fund was budgeted as miscellaneous revenue. So when we present the audit, that goes on that top line, the revenues. But really, it's recognized in that third line, other financing sources. So that's where you see that large discrepancy in the budgeted revenue. We'd recommend that you budget that transfer down in transfers next year for a fuller picture. But then expenditures, you budgeted 2.6, spent 2.76, and then the result was a change in fund balance of negative 963,000. So any questions on the budget to actual for those three funds? Okay. Okay, enterprise funds. The next 2 pages. Not going to spend a ton of time here, but just going to hit on some of the highlights. We got 4 tables on the page with the summarized financial statements: cash, net position or equity, operating revenues, and operating expenses. Cash in the Public Utilities Fund, large increase. That's because of the Leah sale and final equity distribution. So now that Leah is out of the picture per se, you got paid out for that, essentially. Sewer, slight decrease in cash, primarily due to long-term debt payments and purchases of construction of capital assets. If you look at sewer, net position actually increased. So that's where I harp on that, cash isn't the sole indicator of the health of a fund. There's other assets and liabilities at play. So while cash did go down, the health of the fund actually increased. Solid waste disposal had a profitable year. Revenues were almost spot on to what they were in 22 at 1.86 million, and expenses, went down 55,000. Cash flow was positive, and also an increase to net position. The golf course, you had an increase to revenues, which outweighed the increase to expenses that you had, so that resulted in a smaller operating loss than in prior years. Again, not the biggest numbers we're talking about here, but still noteworthy nonetheless, I think, that loss was smaller than prior years. We also have the Washington Manor and Clinic Facility capital lease presented here, but I don't plan on talking about either of those unless anybody has any questions. Okay, you guys are easy. Okay, we go to page 10. The findings, and Mayor Cuffey already touched on the segregation of duties, which we will talk about briefly here. We've got 3 findings this year. The first 2, very standard. I'm trying to think if I have, they're probably in, if not all, I don't ever want to speak in absolutes, but upper 90% of our local government audits, we have both of these findings in there. So we're doing our due diligence to bring it to you, to make you aware that we have these findings in place. The first one, segregation of duties. This isn't in here saying that you're doing a poor job. It's just that as auditors, we would like to see more segregation of duties. We'd always like to see more segregation of duties. So again, it's not a reflection on staff doing a poor job of this. It's just the fact that you have a small office and you're limited on what you can divvy up per se. We have to have this finding in the audit. Similarly, the financial reporting finding, I don't like the title of this one. I always say we got to look at changing it because it sounds like the office is in disarray. That's not what this means. If you read between the lines, it's purely for the fact that you contract with us to put the audit report together. It's not worth your staff's time. It's been determined by council and management. It's not worth your staff's time to put the audit together. We put, I don't know how many of these together every year. So it's more valuable for you to focus on other things and to hire us to put the whole audit report together. If, let's say we were one of the big, massive firms, Ernst & Young or Deloitte & Touche, and you were a Fortune 500 company, 3M or Target Corp, we'd come in and Britt or Sherry would hand us the audit report, basically minus the first 3 pages and last 10 pages completed. Say, here you go, guys, and we look through it and give our opinion on it. But that's not generally how local government audits go. So that's why we have this finding in here. The third one, this was a legal compliance finding, contracting bid laws. I believe there was, the situation was that one of the one of the projects that was greater than $175,000, the bidder did not provide performance and payment bonds along with the responsible contractor verification form with the bid package that they provided. It should be noted that you accepted the low bid. It's not a reflection of the work being done. I think it was just paperwork that got lost in the shuffle. And it's something to keep an eye on as these costs keep going up for projects. Something that previously maybe you didn't have to worry about. You could just go for quotes because it was below the threshold. We all know how much more expensive everything's gotten the last few years. It's just something to keep an eye on with that. That could have been the case here. Again, I think that's a one-off finding. We're not concerned about it, but it's just, we're doing our due diligence to bring it to your attention. So that's what we have for the true findings. The next page is the management points. So around the office, we might say, call management points findings, but they're not true findings. Those three were findings. Management points are of a lesser degree, but still, we feel like it's valuable to bring it to your attention as council and management. So that's what we have here. The management letter is the last letter in the audit report. So we've got 8 management points this year. We'll start with the top, and I'm just going to summarize these. This one's a carry forward. My understanding is that it's been some years since the deposit investment policy has been reviewed. So we're just recommending that you take a look at that, see if there's any updates that, would be applicable or helpful to be done. Number 2, I don't know how many funds you have off the top of my head, a lot. 12 of them had deficit fund balances, as we state on number 2. Those are listed in note 2 of the actual audit report. Very standard for when there's negative fund balances that we mention that in the management letter as, hey, just keep an eye on that, something to take note of. So that's what we're doing there. Number 3, similarly very standard for our firm, is if there's a loss in an enterprise fund, which are supposed to be self-sustainable or run business-like, as opposed to governmental funds. We always mention that. Public utilities had an operating loss, and golf course had an operating loss as well. So again, this would be our standard finding when you have enterprise funds with losses, operating losses, that is. Number 4, this is a carry forward going back a couple years. Again, I believe our staff has had to do a lot of reconciliations over the last couple of years compared to prior to that. So this is just bringing to your attention that if you want to get back to that level that you were at before, whether it be training or otherwise, or if we're going to be expected to do those going forward, that conversation can be had between myself and Sherry and Britt. But this is just bringing up the fact that some changes have been over the last couple of years as far as how those have been handled. Number 5, we already did talk about this, so I'm not really going to spend time here, but the decreases in fund balances, we talked about general fund, ambulance, ITMEC already. 6, void check copies. This is one that I always, in our office, we have differences of opinion on this one. I get kind of made fun of because I always like this one in there if we bump into this. We always recommend that signature lines be cut out of voided checks. That way, if they fall on the floor, end up in the wrong hands, whatever it might be, there's no way that a bank's going to be able to cash that. So my understanding is that when we were reviewing voided checks, not all of them had signature lines cut out. So we would just recommend that extra step when you're voiding checks and keeping those on hand. Number 7, on a reimbursement grant, one request was made before the expenditure was made. Just keep an eye on that. Make sure that check has been cut before you request reimbursement. I know that the timing thing and with that, and you're trying to get paid back timely, that's probably the situation here. A one-off thing we're not expecting to be a problem. You have lots of grants, and to have only one of these situations, it's it's a one-off thing. We're not expecting to be a problem going forward. And then the last one, kind of related to number 4, there was multiple closed funds that had activity and transactions coded to them that the funds are closed, there should be no activity, then we have to dig into it and figure out, okay, what was this actually for? Where do we have to move this? Where do we have to move move the negative cash and the expenditures to. That's typically what it's for. So if you have funds that are closed, we always recommend that you go in and close them in the software so that you cannot post there. You'll get more useful financials through the year too if things are not posted to those, if transactions are not posted to those funds when you're making decisions as a council and management as well. So that's what I have. Any questions, comments, anything anybody want to visit?
I have one.
Yes.
If you could just briefly explain to me, it doesn't need to be about depreciation. I know private companies depreciate, there's tax, adjustment that made for that, but in public service, we don't have that. We still have to depreciate. So our depreciation, just I guess yes or no, does depreciation of included in some of the deficits, for example, the golf course?
Yes, it would be. So enterprise funds, exactly, Mayor. Enterprise funds reflect depreciation in the financial statements. Governmental funds do not. There's government-wide financial statements that if I give a very formal presentation and I go through the audit report, I don't even touch on the government-wide financial statements because if you get a report run from Cassell or Civic, it's not even in that format. That's where your governmental funds, fixed assets are depreciated. But very good point. There's non-cash expenses in those enterprise funds that will contribute to operating losses. Now, as an auditor, you've got to fund that depreciation, but it's something to keep in mind. Just because if you have significant infrastructure or fixed assets, you might be running an operating loss, but still net cash positive. So, I mean, that's a good point.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Of
course.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the financial office staff who are here present today doing the work of 3 people with 2 people in the office, and then Sherry doing all the work she does. I'm impressed and proud that we only have the findings we do, 2 of them being very, very, very common for all small organizations. And I just really don't think folks understand the amount of time and effort, especially the 2 of you put in every day to making sure you're doing the best you can and doing somebody else's job. We had 3 people in that office to help alleviate some of that, the crossover, so everybody had their departments, and that has gone away this year. So that's the first thing I want to point out. Thank you very much. I also want to thank you for providing a very fact-based presentation today, just giving us the facts and letting us figure out what we think needs to be changed and done. There's a lot of pages here, 120 some pages. Bringing the fact sheets and singling it out but referring back is very helpful and very useful. And I think it demonstrates that the city is doing the best it can. I also appreciate how you explained with the Intramotor Event Center and that we should be budgeting that separately, that transfer in, because it speaks to the work that the staff is doing over there. So I appreciate you coming in today. I appreciate the work that you and your company put into this. And I don't look forward to reading all of this, but I'm going to do my best in the next couple of weeks to get through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. These reports do not get smaller. I can tell you people that's for sure.
Well, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Mr. Kelly, any other questions for Mr. Kelly at this point in time? Once again, Councilor Freely?
Yeah, I just want to say that was a very concise but thorough report, so I really appreciate the time you put into that, Tom.
Of course. Thanks, Councilor Freely.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. So no other questions before? We got a lot of reading to do, but thank you for that, as it was stated earlier.
There's no test on Monday, so don't worry about it.
That's a good thing for me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it very much.
Item number 3 is Mr. Matt Reeder, City Engineer of Record from SEH, to discuss change order number 2 for the sewer rehabilitation Phase 1 project.
Once again, good morning, Matt.
Morning. I was coming this morning thinking I was going to get to see the former manager of the Twins here presenting the audit, but guess not.
Very true. Very true.
All right. So in front of you, you should have a memo from me as well as the change order request summarizing this project that was supposed to be fairly simple turned into quite a complicated little project. Some of it was self-induced by us, but nonetheless, there were some issues that came up during the project that we had to deal with that were unforeseen as well. So I tried to summarize it as best I could in the memo. If you'd like, I can go through it at a high level. I can go through it in a lot of detail. I can let you answer questions. I could do whatever you'd like. But at the end of the day, there were some unforeseens, there were some design errors, and there were some value field engineering decisions made by me that helped save some money. So in an effort to try and offset some of the extra costs. So we are going to take responsibility for our mistakes. We'll pay our portion of it. I'll write the city a reimbursement check for that, or I won't, the company will. And so at the end of the day, what it really looks like is about an $18,000 change order to the city. And I did provide a summary of where we're at relative to the budget in my memo on the last page, I guess a 2-page memo, last page of the memo. We are certainly still well within our adjusted budget with that. So despite all of the challenges and changes that have come up, we're still doing pretty well. So I'll stop there and I'll be happy to answer any questions or give any kind of detailed explanation you'd like.
Just one question. September 26th will be OPEP, second hour should be back open, estimated?
We'll let Sean talk about that one.
Okay.
That's a different project, but this
other
project,
piece.
the storm sewer project, they're pouring concrete today, hopefully blacktop later this week, early next week, and then that one, minus a little bit of turf work, should be just about done.
Thank you, Matt. We'll go to Councilor Johnson and then over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
In the second to the last paragraph on our page 11, it requests 6 extra days. Is that part of the change order or is that a separate change order?
I'm sorry?
Page 11. These are
Okay,
not very-
yep.
Additional work for 6 extra days, is that part of this change order or is it an additional change order?
No, this is all related to this one change
Okay,
order.
so this motion can be the $18,000 plus the 6 days.
It would actually be, the motion would be to approve the change order in the amount of $31,767.24, and we'll reimburse the city for
$12.95.
$12,954 something or another. So in the end, the net cost to the city will be like $18,000, but the change order that you will need to approve to compensate the contractor is that $30,000 number.
I will move to support I will move the change order as presented and recommended by the staff, including the 6 days as needed.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the change order request with respect to the Second Avenue project. Is there support? Support by Councilor Paulson. Further discussion, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, thank you so much for such a detailed explanation. I really appreciate that. I could follow along perfectly, so I appreciate that. And there are things we run up against that we don't know. The only question I do have is, could you just explain for me and maybe the general public where this project, I know it's 11th Street South, 11th Street South is where the road is being worked on, but what does this overall project encompass?
Okay, so on the south end of the public safety building project, coming through that site, there's some fairly sizable storm sewer that they're doing as part of their project. Just south of that, on 10th Street South, there's a 36-inch, fairly sizable storm sewer main that runs about a half a block south, crosses 2nd Avenue over by the gas station, and then runs down the alley south of 11th Street, down to where it daylights into the ditch that's 1,000 feet south of there or something. All of that was piecemealed together over the years. The city crews have had to repair that numerous times. It's one of the main storm sewer feeds on the south end of town, on the south end of the north half of town, I should say, if you want north of 53, that was deteriorated, plugged, had other pipes inside of it that were smaller diameter, restricting flow, all those things. And so as part of a CDBG grant, which I should maybe remind to bring that up, this does have $137,000 in CDBG grant money to pay for some of it. We did that portion of the project in anticipation of what's going to be also coming when the repairs are done or the upgrades are done to the public safety building site, so we're ready for that. That,
Absolutely, thank
Okay.
you. And I knew part of it, but I didn't know some of it even on 10th Street South, so that kind of gives me a better picture. But I think it was such a necessity that we did this, so thank you for the explanation
yep.
and for the wonderful job explaining the change order process. Thank you.
I was remiss on the previous presentation, but yeah, so it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion on this, on the change order? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. And our city clerk, as she does on a regular basis, reminded me of my duties and responsibilities with respect to motions. And so I was unable to, I did not entertain a motion to accept the audit report, and we need to do that as well. So moved by Councilor Freely to accept the audit report. Is there support? Support. By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate it very much. Okay, next item, please.
Thank you, Matt. Item number 4 is Sean Lewis from Kraus Anderson, and John McNamara called this morning. He is unfortunately not able to make it regarding the Public Safety Center project.
Mr. Lewis, once again, good morning.
Morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councilors. Again, my name is Sean Lewis. I'm a senior project manager with Kraus Anderson. Always my pleasure to be here with you. I have a short and sweet update this morning, and then one change order to present, and also an update on the contaminated soil remediation. So it should be pretty short and sweet today. I will start with the highlight of probably the past several months after the groundbreaking. We have officially started precast concrete walls as of today. So that's a big celebration and a big milestone on the project. Next picture is that's the first wall panel that was tilted up just before I came over here for the meeting. So it's a big celebration for that, and you'll see precast walls and roof structure continue for about the next 6 weeks. And as we've talked about over the past weeks, we should, around the end of October, see the shape of a building for the most part. And then we'll commence with finishing the inside and the outside of the building over the course of the winter and into the spring. So great news to start with today. Other things we have going on, 2nd Avenue utility and street work. Mr. Mayor asked about that a moment ago. Right now, the utility work is pretty much finished up for that, and now we're looking at the areas where the concrete's cut out in the pictures. We're looking at replacing that concrete paving. So we expect some epoxy-coated reinforcing to arrive this week, and crews are going to be starting tomorrow on drilling in to patch in those patches. So right now, our goal is, if weather cooperates and several other stars align over the next week, we hope to have the street opened up by the end of next week. If not next week, it'll be shortly, a few days after that. That's our goal right now. So, also have the utility contractors continuing on site with site utilities and site work as well. The picture takes a few seconds to flip through, I think. That means connecting water mains and sanitary sewer. That's the change order we'll talk about in a moment here as well, was when we went to do that sanitary sewer work, we found some things in the way. So the primary objective for the utilities we have on the project right now is to get services in and out of the building before winter arrives, so that we know once we need water and we need waste and we need electricity and natural gas and things like that for the building, we've got that. Once the ground's frozen and we can't really do that kind of work anymore, it's in and out of the building, so we know we're ready to finish the inside of the building. Update on contaminated soil remediation. So previously we've remediated where the old railway was. That's all done. Originally we had recommended approval to proceed with that up to $200,000. The tally came in at about $182,000. So we were a little bit under on that. We have results back from NTS, working with them on samples for the southwest corner of the job site. Right now, we have approximately 200 cubic yards of contaminated soil. That's an estimate, kind of depending on how much we find. Could be less, could be a little bit more. But if we put an estimate to that, we are recommending, that's on the agenda as well, and that'll be a little bit later after my presentation. We are recommending approval to proceed with remediating that portion up to $40,000. We currently have $67,686 budgeted for soil contamination right now. We have a fund there for this purpose. So we would be a little bit under that if we came up to the $40,000. I'm really hoping we're actually under the $40,000 as well for this part, but did want to give us a little bit of cushion there in case we come across some more. And we do that in collaboration with NTS once we start doing the remediation. So they basically help us make a judgment out there and what needs to go and what can stay. Quick overall budget update as well. We presented and discussed the overall project budget 2 weeks ago, and there, by request, we were asked to do a change order log or a contingency log. So I thought this morning we'd zero in on that part of the overall budget. So up on the screen, I've got that. These are the change orders to date, including the value engineering credit change orders that we had back in July, and then the other subsequent ones we've had. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the change order requests number 6 and 7, and 8 will be, that'll come up, some things we had on the 2nd Avenue paving that KA is still working together with Wold on, and I'll update the group on that later on. And then today, we're talking about change order request number 9, and that's for rerouting sanitary sewer that was meant to go and connect into the 2nd Avenue, and I have a little more explanation on that on the next couple of slides. But the thing I wanted to point out was that currently we have a contingency fund that's meant for helping to pay for change orders like what we've been talking about 2 weeks ago and again this morning. Unforeseen conditions, the fire chief or the police chief says, we'd really like to try to look at doing this or that. That contingency fund of $875,000 and a little bit, and what's $875,681.31 is what we have currently as of today. That's intended for contingency for change orders for unforeseen conditions. Owner decides to make some changes to add some value to the project. So that's before the $20,000 change is made or approved today. Then again, we also have the $67,685 additionally budgeted for soil remediation. So we've got funds there ready to cover the change order we'll talk about today. And then I'll continue to update the group as often as you'd like on where we're at with change orders and the contingency balance. And right now we're in great shape. We're within budget, we're on schedule. And like I said, we're in good shape overall. Today's change order request 9 was to reroute the sanitary sewer. It's $20,792.21. Unforeseen subsurface conditions. So I tried to kind of zoom in on, this is drawing, so bear with me, those of you that don't look at drawings every day like some of us do in construction. But just to illustrate the red line here, if you can see my cursor on the screen, that's originally where the design was intended to connect in 2nd Avenue to a manhole that's right here. When the utility crews went to do that, we found that there was another pipe perpendicular at the exact same elevation, if you think about 3-dimensional geometry, where that sanitary sewer was intended to pass through. So it was obstructed. So after some site investigation and collaborating together with our site superintendent, Gary, and our civil engineers and the design team, we decided that going north, you can see in the clouded part of the drawing, to that other manhole that is unfortunately a little bit further along, but it's free of obstruction. That was the better route to go after opening up the ground, so to speak. And that's what this change order is all about. And so that's an extra $20,000, primarily because of the extra material to go that much further up to that manhole.
Okay, Councilor Johnson.
Please go ahead.
What will be on top of that, the new how accessible will that line be in the
Yeah,
future?
Great question, Councilor Johnson. Thank you. Primarily, that's turf. It'll be turf and soil landscaping and things like that right there.
Perfect, thank you.
Just inside the curb, in other words, the back of the curb. Yep.
Okay. We're going to need a motion one way or the other, moving forward with the request by Sean Lewis from Carl Anderson with direction from staff and engineering recommending the approval of change order number for PR 17 to reroute the sanitary sewer 2nd Avenue due to the unforeseen obstruction of another pipe in the original agreement. So move to approve that by Councilor Freely, been supported by, or two there, Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And now the second one?
Yes, please. Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. The soil remediation, we do recommend to proceed with that up to $40,000, and then we'll report back what exactly that comes in at.
Up to how much?
$40,000, please.
$40,000, okay.
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Paulson moves to approve the recommendation to approve the proceeding with the contaminated soil remediation at the southwest corner of the job site of the public safety building, up not to exceed $40,000. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So did you state it was around 60, or was it 87 or 67,000 left?
On the budget, or well, the budget for that soil remediation,
Soil remediation,
67,000 and a little more, yeah.
Can you foresee having more remediation to do?
We're hoping not on the project site, not that needs to come out of the project fund balance.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions at all, or that I can?
I plan on coming over there this afternoon to visit you and Gary Francisco and
Great.
get a little bit more of a tour system. So thank you for that.
Great.
One other question.
Oh, yes, please, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. Thank you. And since you're here, I pulled out your last packet.
Yep.
And we've got the fire chief and battalion chief here. Deputy chief, excuse me. But what I was just going to ask is, when we had talked under the FF&E, because we're coming forward to talk about a new software program, and we had listed in there technology and security allowance, and we were going to allocate some dollars to that.
Yep.
And what I'm hoping to do is be able to take whatever the dollar amount is and allocate it under that, if you guys are comfortable doing that way. But do we have an allocation for that?
There will be on the bottom of the overall budget that you're looking at that we presented and discussed 2 weeks ago. There's a $1 million unallocated funds. That's in addition to the $800,000 contingency fund we talked about. So that $1 million, what Britt and I have talked about, and I don't want to speak for you, Britt, but what we have talked about is some of that will get reallocated into IT to fund some of those kind of things.
Okay, so I just
Yep,
wanted
that's in
to
process.
see if that had been a discussion, and so it obviously has been. So, okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Lewis? Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Take care.
Councilors, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 5, and it's approve the maintenance striping request or contract with St. Louis County and to adopt the resolution approving the agreement.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Further discussion? A lot of it already going on. Yeah, this is something different, but so a lot of striping going on.
Thing, but for next year. So now they're working on this year's contract. As you might have noticed, a lot of our yellow lines are being painted and the white lines are being painted, and our staff are doing the parking lot lines, and it's just a lot going on right now.
Very good. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Has been moved and supported. Further discussion, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I see in here it has aggregate crushing. We don't use that portion of this contract, do we? Because we dump it all and do our own. Okay, so we just won't, it's part of the contract, but we just don't utilize it. Thank you.
Sherry?
I just have a question for Public Works Director Jim Rossovit. I budgeted $150,000 in the street maintenance. Is this going to fall in there?
Jim? Jim Rosvit, our Public Works Director. Good morning, Jim.
Sorry, I didn't catch it. There's so much noise out in the hall that struggling to hear.
Sherry?
Mayor, Council, Jim, I had budgeted $150,000 in the street maintenance. Will that fall under this?
For
For your stripping?
the crushing of concrete?
Yeah, the crushing, maintenance, striping.
No, for
Striping?
striping.
Okay, it's only striping. All right.
What's that, Pam?
$20,000 last.
That's what I thought it was, yeah.
Okay.
It averages right around there, 21,000.
All right, just checking.
Thank you, Jim. We have motion on the floor and support. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda comes to us from the last committee of the whole meeting. It's to review and approve the managed services agreement with Locality Media, Inc. and the Virginia Fire and Ambulance Department. And we have Deputy Chief Jonason here.
Assistant Chief Jonason, good morning.
Good morning. So what this proposal is currently for EPCRs, that's all of our ambulance reports that we're required to do. For NFIRS, for training, we use a different software platform for each one of those. Different login, different fee. They're not super user-friendly. There's better out there that can provide more for roughly the same cost that we're paying. All these different companies, this falls under one umbrella, First Do, and that'll allow us to do our EPCRs, our NFIRS reporting, which is required by state and federal government. It'll give us the ability to start electronically pre-planning businesses and homes for fire response, which right now we have an antiquated paper system that is not easily accessible unless you're in the station, which if we're at a fire, we're not in the station. It'll also give our fire marshal the ability to have a separate investigations report. Right now, our fire marshal is currently kind of ad hocing it. This one is designed for fire marshals, fire investigators. And when they are done with that report, they can tag it on to the NFIRS report that's completed by the officer in charge or myself or chief. And then it becomes part of that living document that the state and federal government can see. Responder, right now we're using I Am Responding. It's not working out so great. There's a lot of issues with it. So essentially we're paying money to this company for a product that is not meeting our needs. That'll be wrapped into here, so we'll be able to get rid of I Am Responding. We'll get rid of Image Trend. Image Trend is very expensive, I believe $18,000, $19,000, and it was touted to be this kind of one-stop shop. Well, the only thing we use it for is our EPCRs and our NFIRS. The pre-plan building occupancy side of it is so cumbersome and difficult to use that we stopped using it years ago. So training and records, we're paying currently Fire Rescue 1 to do that. That contract, when it expires, I believe early this spring, we'll drop that. First Do will take all of our training records, import them into their system so that we don't have to pay separate fees to maintain those and pull them up should we need to in the future. Same with personnel management. Currently, right now, all the certifications that are required for us to be paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, fire officers are kind of just done on our city server. There's no reminders unless you physically go in to look at it and see when the certification is expiring, when do I need this class by. With this program, we'll get reminders and we set it up for what we want. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, so that the officers, the admin, will get reminders of who needs what, so that we don't run into issues of certifications lapsing. Along with that, like I mentioned, the training records, events and activities. Right now, we just use an Outlook calendar. It's okay, but this will be far more robust, and we'll be able to access it from our phones no matter where we're at. We don't have to call into the station to see what's going on what such and such day. Not everybody has Outlook on their home phones that's tied to our dispatch, which is kind of the brain center of the fire station right now. So it'll give that communication and knowledge to everybody. They can see what events are taking place. If you forget what time the open house is, you don't have to call into the station or wait until you're on duty. You can pull up your mobile phone, your app, look at it, and say, yep, starts at 6 o'clock. Assets and inventory. Right now, honestly, we're using 1970s method of assets and inventory, which is writing it down, transferring to a spreadsheet. With this system, we'll be able to modernize our assets inventory, make it much more user-friendly and manageable for us. We can even go as far as putting barcodes on equipment. Scan it, you set it up. Now you have a living document. You can pull it up easily, see everything that we own. The year that it was manufactured, year projected end of life, so we can start building a better capital improvement plan, knowing that some of our stuff does have 5, 10, 15-year lifespan on it, and really help us cut down on the waste, cut down on the last minute. We didn't realize that airbags were end of life next year. Oh my gosh, we have to try to squeeze it in somehow. So it'll allow us on the backside to really build out a far more robust capital improvement plan. Medication tracking, again, everything we do medication tracking wise is done on paper, aside from the medications that we use on calls. That's in our EPCR. That won't change with this. But this will give us an electronic way to track our medications when the medications expire, so we don't run into issues of something being overlooked and carrying an expired medication on one of our medic units. It'll allow us to electronically track all of our scheduled medications. Currently, that's just done by paper, and every time with this system, one of our medics uses a scheduled medication such as fentanyl, ketamine, Ativan, Versed. The system will automatically track it via serial or lot number and account for it. So if the DEA ever does come knocking and wants to do an audit on us, we have all those electronic files right there and ready for them. CAD integration. So we get our dispatch information sent to us via St. Louis County Dispatch to our MDCs in the front of our medic units and our fire apparatus. Very similar to what police department has. It'll allow them to continue doing that. And actually the bonus of this is talking with St. Louis County in 2026, they're moving to Tyler Technologies, which is parent owner of First Due. So that'll make the integration even better. We'll be able to get more pertinent information quicker from the county. And currently this integration, right now when we go to, let's say, a fire incident at a commercial building, we don't get layouts, we don't get diagrams or pre-plans of anything. With this new technology, it'll be automatically sent to our phone. We'll get a Google view of the building and everything that we've pre-planned, from emergency exits to fire department connections to hazardous materials, where elevator shafts are, everything that's pertinent to firefighter safety and citizen safety that we've pre-planned is already in there at a swipe of a fingertip. So it'll really help improve our operations, our efficiency, and firefighter and public safety. And then the other portion, which is it's kind of a sticker shock, but the $7,000 implementation fee is transferring a lot of that data from our old systems into the new one, and then having them come up and actually show us how to properly implement this so that we're not using it to 10% of its capacity, we're using it to 95% of its capacity. And the one bonus is this isn't all they offer. This is what we've kind of picked working with the company to start with, because it's a big elephant. But moving forward, there are ways that residents and owners in the city can actually essentially do their own pre-plan, log it into the system so they can tell us where their children are sleeping, where the bedrooms are located, if they have pets, if they have people that require extra assistance because of disabilities or other issues. So that's another add-on, along with a few other things that we can add on down the future. But for now, this is what we're looking at. In the end, it's going to be roughly about the same that we're paying for everything right now, minus that implementation fee on year one.
Okay.
I think I covered everything.
All right. No. Well, thank you, Chief Jonason. I think that moving toward the consolidation of the services you provide and getting the big bang for your buck in that regard, the upfront cost of implementation services you see is $7,000. So we got to figure out, is that money come out of your regular budget, and is that going to be implemented in 2025 or 2024, and how you pay for that? And so my only question to you is this, before we move to the rest of the council, is what is the estimated time frame of implementing this system if it is in fact approved?
So when approved, I would like to sign this year, looking at dues and subscriptions between fire EMS. We can squeeze it in. It'll be super tight. But it's going to take several months to implement everything. I believe our subscription to Image Trend, which is our NFIRS and EPCR, expires in April. That gives us roughly a 6-month implementation because it's not a cookie cutter patient care report. We have to build that from the ground up.
And you could do that within the 6 months, you think?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson, then over to Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. The one question I have when it comes to equipment maintenance, I know the Public Works has their own kind of program for the maintenance of the vehicles. How will you communicate with each other? What will you guys do to make sure nothing gets dropped?
So that communication will remain the same, and it could be a little more robust with this program. Currently, right now, when we have an issue with a piece of apparatus, it's reported to the OIC. Then the OIC has to write it down. If it's after hours for the next OIC, then they call the city garage and they schedule it out. With this new system, as the crew member is doing the rig check and they note a deficit, it'll email the OIC, myself. We can link it to Public Works email so they get a notification that Medic 4 has a headlight out or the AC is not working. And then when they complete it, we can go into the system, they can go into the system, mark it as repaired, sifts and tracks it. So then we have essentially a living document of all the repairs that each apparatus has gone through. Whereas right now, I have to go into a file cabinet and I've got files that are 5 inches thick of all the repairs, and I have to hand sort every single one to look at it and see, okay, when did we last repair this issue? So it'll kind of streamline that. It's not going to change what Public Works does as far as their repair schedules for oil changes, preventive maintenance, stuff like that. It's just a more robust system and allows us a way of tracking what repairs have been done on what. So we get a better idea of if a certain brand has more issues with transfer cases than the other than just going back and saying, I think we repaired it 3 times. Now I got to sift through, 400 pages of repairs to find the 3 that we did.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate doing the research to find that out. I think the efficiencies this will create is well worth the initial cost of $31,950. I think that's, as we move forward, and that's what this is moving forward, doing that is definitely needed, and I appreciate that we're coming 6 months in advance of the end of the contract. I should think it demonstrates your department's ability to plan ahead and to want to make things better overall. So I'm fully supportive of this and getting it done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm so sorry I referred to your previous
that's okay.
position. I apologize for that. But I just want to also say thank you. I read over this, and I just think it sounds like such a wonderful interactive software. And I know when one of the previous employees that was there was moving between 2 different Deb, she was moving between two different screens or whatever all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like this is an excellent way to integrate what you guys need. And I think I didn't realize last week when we were discussing this, it's the difference between basically the 31.9 and then what we are currently spending. So it's only a very small amount
Correct.
that we're talking about in terms of a
Biggest
wonderful
change is, like you
upgrade.
mentioned, that implementation fee of $7,000 and change.
I think it's just fantastic, and a lot of it is just, a lot of that pre-planning really goes a long ways, so.
It does.
It's
And-
fabulous. The one question that I did have, though, the subscription fee, is that then an annual subscription fee, so we'd have to budget that every year, or is it? So it's an annual subscription fee, but the current annual subscription fees are the below number,
Yes.
26.6. So really, it's not, I mean, we're really getting a way more robust system that's going to allow you much better safety mechanisms going forward. And in terms of just the information and reports that this would be able to generate would be really valuable to the department.
Absolutely. And then on the public safety side, none of the systems that we have right now have a good pre-planned system that we can use real-time in emergency situations. So being able to add that in and continue to pay what we're similarly paying for these other systems, like you mentioned, it is far more robust, and we do have the capabilities to expand it out in the future should we want to add in those community connect programs. And there's some other building inspection programs if what buildings or what engineering and our fire marshal aren't using it. If it's not turning out to be so great, they have a program for that they can look at. They have scheduling. So there's another half a dozen a la carte things we can add in the future if we want or need to.
That's just awesome. I wanted to ask you on the assets and inventory, so on our equipment and inventory management, is that something you guys currently have now? Do you have a software that helps you determine like useful life and, what work has been done, on vehicle maintenance, basically? Do you have something like that now, or are you doing that
Right now, we don't
manually?
have. Right now, the vehicle maintenance is done manually.
So this will be really a wonderful new tool for
Yep.
you guys to, whatever you put in there, you're going to get wonderful reports generated.
Yep. So it's a lot to implement. And our priority will be implementing the pre-planning, the EPCR, since that's what we do all of our ambulance billing off of, and the infers, and then the asset management. So all of our things that do have, a soft life of 10 years or whatever the case may be, we can put those in, put in the purchase dates, and then we can set it up so that 2 years in advance, I get a notification that our airbags are going to hit their end of life in 2 years, so I can make sure that's built into our CIP moving forward, and it's not a last minute scrambling like we have to replace those or we're going to run out. So it'll really help us and whoever our predecessors may be continue moving forward. And
And then the last point, I think when we were talking about the FF&E budget, this is such a minimal amount. I thought it was like actually 40,000. So I don't even know that we need to even put that as a line item. I just thought it was an additional expense. So I'm fine with the cost. I know we don't probably have it in our budget for 2024, but we can plan for 25. And then when would we need to, if we signed, when would we need to actually make the?
I have the most current, he just emailed it to me today, I believe September 30th.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we can start implementation October 1st, which are our first priority. So right now I mentioned that messaging system we use for getting messages out to off-duty staff when we have structure fires or we need callback staff. That expires at the end of this month. So that's why we're initially looking at like a January implementation, but I don't want to have to pay for another year of the system that's not working for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. So unless there are other questions, looking for to entertain a motion moving forward. Apparently, we do have another comment, Councilor Motley.
Just to say thank you for the presentation. I support this thoroughly. And actually, in the long run, it looks like we'll save little over $1,600 a year with a system that clearly will be better than what you're currently using. So I'll make the motion to move this forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Motley entertains the motion to move forward to approve the agreement for managed services with Locality Media Incorporated and the Virginia Fire Department and Ambulance Department. Is there support? Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Ed,
Motion carries. Councilor Beyondich.
thank you. I just wanted to also say thank you. I appreciate all of the work and the time that goes into this, and I understand trying to move all that data to a new system, but it will be so much more efficient. So thank you for all of that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that very much. Anything else?
I'm going to defer to Pam real quick. This is where I talk about Sprint Medic.
What are we talking about?
Okay.
Onto the agenda? Okay, please continue.
Yeah, with your permission, I didn't get it on the agenda in time, so I just wanted to bring you up to speed about the Sprint Medic pilot program that was awarded to St. Louis County and Otter Tail Grant County through the legislation in the fiscal year, I always get this mixed up, 25 state fiscal year. So the state awarded a total of $7 million to implement a pilot program called Sprint Medic. So essentially, when you divide that money, that'll be about $2.5 million, give or take, coming to St. Louis County. Chief Frederickson and myself worked with Tower Ambulance, Cook Ambulance, Orr Ambulance, and Boys Fort Net Lake Ambulance, and developed a preliminary plan to submit to the Arrowhead region, St. Louis County. Nobody else submitted a plan, so really it's our pilot project to run forward with. We've had 3 meetings with the partnering BLS services, but essentially what this program is designed to do is put paramedics in chase vehicles out in other PSAs. So with our plan that we're drafting, we'd have 2 Sprint medics on 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday to begin with. And we'd have 1 Sprint medic up covering the Cook or Boys Fort area, and 1 Sprint medic covering the Tower PSA. They would be responsible for responding to ALS calls upon dispatch. We're still working out which calls they're going to immediately respond to and which calls they're going to wait for the BLS service to respond to. Pilot program will go to pay for the vehicles, the equipment, the straight time. Unfortunately, we can't cover backfill or overtime in the grant. So through the billing agreements, we're working out with the primary services. There will be a small fee tacked on to help cover, because at the same time, we can't impact our daily normal operations. So we're looking at relying on overtime staff for this. But in the end, it's not going to cost the city anything. Our medics will get some great experience, and we get to take part in a pilot program that may change how EMS is delivered in the state. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of what's going on. Once we have more formal things worked out, obviously we'll come and present it to the council. There's MOUs and bylaws that'll have to be looked at and approved by the council, but right now we're still in like phase 1, which is preliminary planning, but I didn't want you guys to be left out in the dark, and keep you aware of how we're trying to move forward and kind of look at changing delivery. And I know our partnering agencies are excited, so should be good things to come.
Question?
Well, the CMSRB board, when the original legislation came down, and I went down and testified on a number of occasions down there with respect to this, is still a controversial project moving forward. In the beginning, I'm glad that it's developed and enveloped into a collaborative of the existing providing agencies as opposed to finding a separate agency which do that, which the original proposal was. So by doing this collaborative authorizing, you're combining all the services, but some are going to be BLS services, some are going to be ALS services. But this collaborative agreement coming up with the bylaws is an important step moving forward to provide, thinking out of the box of how emergency services is provided in the future. And I think it's going to be a measuring stick on what the legislature really has to do for the long-term fix for EMS, particularly ALS service in the north part of the state of Minnesota. So thank you for your hard work on that, Chief. Councilor Freelieb?
So having that personnel out in the field, so to speak, Eric, would that potentially reduce unreimbursed or minimally reimbursed ambulance runs?
I'm sorry, I was trying to get my chief up here. Can you repeat the question?
Like, if you have those people already out in the field addressing issues that are out there, could that significantly or potentially reduce those ambulance runs that we've been sending that we don't get fully reimbursed for? Could save money for.
Yeah, the intercepts, we anticipate that it'll, in those areas, significantly decrease the amount of intercepts that we do. So now, we just talked about it at our meeting yesterday. Instead of sending an ambulance with 2 staff from Virginia Fire Department to Tower or to Bike, you're sending 1 paramedic. So it's reducing the manpower strain on our staff at the station. And not only that, but now instead of waiting 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending where they're at, you have that medic that is far closer, so the response time is going to be far less.
Eliminate the need for
That's what we're looking at, yeah. In the future, instead of sending a fully stocked ambulance with 2 paramedics, we might be able to send a SUV with 1 paramedic and a complement of equipment. That's less wear and tear on our ambulances, less mileage on our ambulances. It's far cheaper to buy a new Tahoe than it is an ambulance.
We'd be utilizing off-duty staff that would be already up there, meaning on-duty is in our town more available for our needs. So that's absolutely.
So yeah, when you look at it, it's a win-win for the city of Virginia, our staff, our operations. It's a win for these rural communities that some of them are struggling to put 2 people on an ambulance. Our paramedic could act as that second member of that ambulance and help those citizens get timely emergency care when they need it.
Thank you, Councilor Freelieb. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I just want to say, for me, I think it's great we're working with other communities and we're partnering and working together. So thank you for doing that and reaching out and making this work. Thanks.
We're excited.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Motley.
I was just going to echo Councilor Freelieb. That's exactly what I was curious on what was going to happen. I turned my light off, but I know exactly how much we're used to, how we intercept all over the place, working in the Virginia hospital. We're constantly going other places outside Virginia. So this is super exciting to hear. I hope things go exactly how you want them. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Motley. So have we voted on that? It was just an update. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
We'll try. Thanks, man.
Just bring the cash in. Okay, thank you. All right. Next item, please.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the managed services agreement with Pantheon Computers.
I will move the agreement.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the agreement with Pantheon Computers as presented. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councilor Freelieb. Further discussion? Councilor Paulson.
Mayor, I just have a question. I have a couple, actually. How often do Pantheon employees come to the site of Virginia versus how much we are contracting Roger to come to the site?
It depends on what we're working on. They were just here recently dropping off some items, some new access points and some battery backups. So it depends on what's going on. A lot of this stuff can be done remotely, whether it's Roger or Pantheon that's doing it. Roger is here 2 days a week as part of his agreement with the police department.
Yep.
Because they have such different needs, bigger than we do.
So, because I look at this too under the City of Virginia Police Department, we've got a managed services agreement as well. And I'm just wondering if it's time to maybe look at this contract and look at it a little differently. Because I think we're paying, this is $7,444 a month. And then Rogers Online, that's the name of his company, right? Yeah. We're paying him between 5,000 and 8,000. It depends on what
He's doing.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering if we could maybe, if we do another request for proposal, we haven't done one for a long time on that. I'm not opposed to moving forward, but I'm just wondering how often that they're actually here, and is there somebody else that maybe could perform the same work for a lower amount, since Roger now has morphed into doing a lot of what the services that originally Pantheon was supposed to do.
Yes and no. A lot of what Pantheon does, a lot of the reason we have Pantheon in the managed services, they do our backups, they do our antivirus, they do a lot of things that you wouldn't need to be here for.
Right.
You don't have to be here for it. Roger doesn't do that. Roger does a lot of the boots on the ground stuff that we need, which interestingly enough, I actually have a proposal I'll bring to the next committee of the whole from Roger to give us a capped dollar amount per month, because he understands it's fluctuating, so he's going to be proposing that we just cap him at this dollar amount to try to help us budgeting wise too.
Do you think that there's anybody else out there?
I think you'd probably get the same kind of service that we've already got. It's not, and right now Pantheon is the one that's working with us on the IT budget for the new servers,
Okay.
whatever we're bringing, what can stay, what
So
can go.
I guess I haven't seen them or had an update from them in so long.
It's been a little while. They were here for 3 days with the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. When was that, Brian? When they, Jim was here last, maybe it was March, April, May, somewhere around there. They were here 3 days at the event center getting that stuff worked out because we were having some glitches still.
Okay.
So they do come. It's periodic. And often we don't need them. The times when we need Rogers, it's emergency usually.
Right.
It's Jody's computer crashed and Jody's now gone, but she had the blue screen of death 2 weeks ago. There's nothing anybody can do remotely. That you have to have somebody physically here to do
Okay.
that.
Well, thank you for that
Yeah,
explanation.
and I will get you Roger's proposal before the next committee of the whole, so you guys can take a look at that too.
Does any of this need to be tweaked then in terms of what they're doing?
I do want to point out that when you guys just most of your surfaces are in the budget for 25 to be replaced because they are at the end of life. They can't take the Windows 11 upgrade. And so your backups will go from, now I got 4 of them are backed up. Those are the 4 newest ones. So there'll be 3 more backups in 25 that we'll have to add on. And it's a small dollar amount. It's $30, no, not even that, $3. It's very, very low.
But are they, okay, thanks for that, Britt.
Yeah.
And then are they doing like services scheduled outside of normal service hours? So they are doing that? It's not Roger that's doing that?
If we have to. It depends on what it is. We haven't had a system failure that would have been related to Pantheon. Roger is here after hours when CTC goes down, so the internet provider's down, or when the phones are down, or the generator kicked on, or those kind of things that wouldn't necessarily be Pantheon's deal anyway,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
The
All right.
room here, we need an amp installed, and I need somebody to put the amp in, so I certainly could pay Pantheon to come up, but why would I do that when Roger's offered?
No, and that's
to do
what we
that?
had stated, the reason why Roger was.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure.
He's cheaper to have him do it, and he won't charge us mileage to do it.
Okay.
but-
Thank you. Thank you, Britt.
But thank you,
Mary.
and thankfully, Roger, was, like I said, has come forward with a proposal for us too, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Britt, it's safe to say that Pantheon is kind of the overall manager of all technology, and then Roger does some specific focused on the police department. And what we are missing in the city is a technology person who can go around and help us log into our computers and fix connections to the printers and all of that day-to-day busy worker bee stuff. Pantheon doesn't manage any of that. That's stuff we need to manage internally.
And they could, it's just going to be more expensive for them to come here to do that, so we just choose not to do that.
Because right now, we don't have any quote-unquote technology people to help with the day-to-day operation. It's
Correct.
you or somebody else trying to fix a computer.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8 is at the Committee of the Whole on September 3rd. Mr. Rossfit from Public Works was present to discuss 2 items that he wanted to purchase. We did talk a little bit about how could we make that capital equipment purchase. In your packet, I did include the email from Maya Thibodeau, who stated as long as the equipment is equipment, and then in a subsequent email that I got yesterday, the life of the items we buy must match the life of the bond, which is, I believe, 10 years. So they have to be, it's not something, you wouldn't just buy a disposable something, you would buy something that would last for a little while. So she was completely comfortable with us if we decide to use those funds, the capital equipment bond funds, to purchase the grapple bucket and the mulching head. And we do have Jim here if they have any questions.
Okay, thank you. We were looking at, there's an little addition that came in this morning for item A and B, and there's another one, item C. So the first one is the request for the work bra grapple bucket at a cost of $18,250, which is a carryover from the previous Committee of the Whole meeting. And 8B, the FECON BH047 mulching head for the 180G excavator at a cost of $53,500, also a carryover from the 9/3/24 Committee of the Whole meeting. An additional request, I think you have one before you, is a new quote that was dated 9/6 of 2024 for a new Vactor 2100i 12-yard back truck, BAC truck, unit 7599, which the scope work would be that with sandblasting the interior of the vac body and install 2 coats of Fenicon HS epoxy coating to the interior, labor and materials to complete the above list task at a cost of $12,600. Jim, you've already explained A and B. We already are well aware of what you need for that. On item C, could you just come up and give us just a brief synopsis of what that is for not only the public certification, for a little clarity for us? Thank you, Jim. Jim Rosvet, our Public Works Director.
Morning again. The lining of that vac truck, that's our new vac truck jetter that we purchased. It was $650,000, so it was a big investment. What this is it's like a rhino lining on steroids. They sandblast down the interior, but we'd like to get it done prior to that truck being put into service. They'll apply 2 coats of it, and what it does is it'll save the life of our truck. So instead of changing steel out as that wears, because that vac truck will pull up stuff like dirt, gravel, sand, things like that, that'll wear into that steel plating inside the tanker of that truck, where if you put a material in there that's gonna wear over time, you can go back and after 10 years or 5 years or 8 years, make that investment again, and it's a lot cheaper to reline it again as opposed to changing out the steel or changing out the tank and the lining itself, so.
Okay, thank you, Jim. If you could just hang here for a few minutes. Councilor Johnson.
I will move the authorization for the work brow grapple bucket using the extra funds at $18,250.
So moved or support.
Moved by Councilor Johnson to approve item 8A. Was that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. The work grapple bucket at a cost of $18,250 and supported by Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify, if I could, share your Brit. What were the amounts of or what is the amount of the van that we chose not to purchase? And then is this going to be underneath that with all 3 of these items, or is it going to be in addition to? Or will there be a savings or a further expense? So, because we've got one. What's the total of all 3, Jim?
$3,000, I believe.
83,000.
36, somewhere around there.
83,750. Then how much had we allocated from that equipment bond for the van? Was it about the same?
Mayor?
Sherry?
62.
We allocated Park and Rec plow truck, that was 64,000, and then the pickup maintenance type van was 70,000, so you're talking $134,000 was allocated, not used yet.
112,000?
134.
I'm sorry, Sherry, I just
That's
have a
okay.
hard time hearing over
I
you.
can, there's
Okay, so we had allocated 134 that we did not expend, and now the total of all three of these is $83,750. And then if we don't expend the other funds, that would go to pay down the bond faster. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. It has been moved and supported to approve item 8A is the work brown grapple bucket at a cost of $18,250. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Item 8B.
I will move 8B for the mulching head, cost of $53,500.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve item 8B, the FECON BH047 mulching head for the 180G excavator at a cost of $53,500. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
For discussion.
Okay, two supports. So we'll support by Counselor Beyondich for further discussion. First, Counselor Beyondich, and then over to Counselor Freely. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. So, Jim, when we purchase these, are these going to be coming soon, or do they have to be ordered?
They might have, I think it's 5 to 6 weeks on a bucket. It might be the same thing. They might have the brush head in stock, but that's still an installation where my shop would do the installation on it, so.
Okay. And so this equipment, from what I remember from our discussion last time, would help clear the water pathway so we wouldn't have the backup in certain areas of town where the water's not free flowing.
Yes, and that's, our biggest concern is our offtake ditches, which expel the water out of the city. A lot of them they've grown in, and your biggest thing is to be able to maintain them. This is a maintenance tool that would be used yearly, and it can be used, the FECON head could be used year-round. There are some stipulations in April and May. They get involved with some of the animals, the birth of animals, waterfowl, the bats, things like that, that you can't. But it is a maintenance tool, and it's something that you should have in your arsenal and use it continuously.
I'm sorry, can I keep going? Thank you.
You're on a roll. Keep going.
I'm on a roll. I know I've discussed with Britt some of the way the water flows and then it hits Mountain Iron. If there's no continuation of that where the water is going to flow, what happens?
The only one we count on Mountain Iron for is it's the Silver Creek.
Right.
And that is a protected waterway. But once it does hit, they line the culverts under Highway 169 there at the off-ramp of 53. So it will go past that, and then if they see it choking up, it's their concern. But that ditch line of theirs is in pretty good shape out there, and it's had pretty good flow because it's never grown anything there. It's kind of been maintained where when ours gets choked up like that and holds it, then the growth really seems to really turn on, so.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Counselor Freely.
It's a curiosity question. So with the mulching head, the materials that you get from that, can that be reused for like to save costs for landscaping mulch, like around flower beds in the park or around tree roots in the park or anything like that? Or is it too big a material and it's just,
No, that's actually one you can control. What the Fecon head is, it's a large drum. I think it's a 40-inch drum on that 47 series. And it rotates like this, and it's got teeth through it, and you got to stand back. It's not made for downtown residential and that, but it's made specifically for our offtake ditches. And it gives us the reach with that 180 excavator. It gives us 30 foot of reach to reach on the backside of a ditch or down a hillside, or fence lines around the mine dump, things like that where we can't get into with we have a brush head, a smaller brush head on our skid steer that we purchased, and we share, Park and Rec's available to use it too because it'll batch it up to their machine.
so all
But
the
this-
material remains on site?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Freely. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion in this matter? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. I guess I need to ask the question, because we did talk about it with the possible or potential FEMA dollars. Was that avenue explored?
The hazard mitigation grants, they don't think will be available till maybe next year, if not the year after. So it's going to be a little while. So
Would this be, even if we do pay for it out of this, could we actually qualify for a reimbursement?
we're going to try, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
We're going to use it as part of our case, what we need to do.
Very good.
Yeah, to keep
Okay.
going forward. And I think we have till the 27th to get that in, so.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
I will move the lining of the new Vector 12-yard vac truck.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson moves to approve item 8C, which is the relining of the VAC. Is there support for that?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else for Mr. Rosvit? Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it very much.
Item number 9 is review the monthly financial reports for August 2024.
Okay, thank you. We had a meeting on Monday. Some of us were present, able to talk about a few things. Looked at the monthly financials for August. So as you look in your packet, does any councilor have any questions, comments that they'd like to bring forth for item 8, item 9 on the agenda? Thank you. Okay, let's move then. You have a question, Councilor Freely?
Do you need a motion for approval of that report? No? Okay, thank you.
No, we do not, but thank you. Okay, move to the next item.
Item number 10 is the request to adopt the resolution to apply for and accept funds from the State of Minnesota Office of Traffic Safety for the TZD grant, which is towards zero deaths.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Motley. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Beyondich. Further discussion, just for the public's edification. This is total zero death grant from the state of Minnesota, which police officers work overtime from a variety of sources. I don't know, are we the fiscal agent again this year for that? We are. And so to address certain areas of concern for traffic enforcement that's meted out by the state of Minnesota. So no cost to the city, everything's reimbursed by that. So thank you for that. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 11 is approve the professional technical services contract with the Minnesota State College and the Virginia Ambulance Service.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Freelieb. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Ongoing agreement with them as well. So is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 12 is a Personnel Committee meeting held on September 10th, 2024.
This is Councilor Paulson's committee. Councilor Paulson.
If you want me to, yep. Item 12A was a request to modify the sewer maintenance job description to a wastewater collection job description and with the updated duties included.
And that moved by Councilor Freely to approve by recommendation of the Personnel Committee and staff. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah,
Yes, please, Councilor Freely.
I just want to recognize, was it Mr. Wolf? Who was very well informed and gave us legitimate information to move forward with this change in terminology. So thank you to him for his input.
Yeah, one example of the great staff that we have. So thank you for that. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
12B was modify the building maintenance repair foreman ITMAC to building maintenance repair foreman Park and Rec and review the updated duties.
Councilor Freely.
I'd like to comment similarly to Wes LaValle, who also brought to the table very important information for us to make informed decision in regard to the changes that we were brought forth. Thank you.
Very good. Is that your motion to approve? Motion by Councilor Freely to approve. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number C from that meeting was the review and approve the update to the team leader job description.
And this is also a recommendation by personnel and staff recommending that these updates be moved forward to the committee of the whole meeting for discussion and approval.
So moved.
Moved to approve by Councilor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the final item from that meeting was to discussion regarding the external posting for the Library Associate Youth Services position.
This came out of personnel recommendation to approve the external posting for the Library Associate Youth Services Department.
I'll move to approve.
Councilor Paulson moves to approve. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. I would like to thank Jody. She did come to the meeting and explained a lot of things to me on the importance of the wording and the position. So I would like to thank her for that.
Okay, it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 13 is the vacancy in the designated building official position, and Mayor Cuffey had requested this be put on the agenda.
Yeah, I asked this be placed on the agenda for maybe consideration by as Bill Cole is currently our designated building official, and on a temporary basis, as needed to keep the city operating, as we know what the building official does, obviously. So I'm looking maybe for a personnel committee to have some kind of a meeting to make a decision or make a recommendation of what we want to do. Do you want to put this out for bids for the building official, or what do you want to do? We're continuing to move this on a contract basis, and so as we move forward, I'd like to see us take a look at how we're going to fill this position if we decide to do so. So I mean, we just put this on the agenda to ask if we could have a personnel committee meeting sooner than later to try to discuss this one, and frankly, the finance clerk number 3 position as well. So that's the only reason I brought this on the agenda. Any questions, comments, or concerns in that regard? Councilor Freely.
Yeah, I view it as a pretty critical position. We've got phased retirement with Bill, who is not going to be here forever and has provided services to us since Christina Nicola has left. So we don't know what that time frame will be for us to continue to have those kinds of services provided. And the volume of work that's been sent to the permitting office upwards of 300 permits that have been requested since flooding in the city and so on, not to mention the volume of work that's being done throughout the city, including the public safety building, which is commercial oversight. So we definitely have to have a person that's qualified for this position in kind of a ASAP situation as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would be prepared to move forward with a motion to do it now, but I asked personnel to take a look at it if they chose, if the personnel chair chooses to do so with the rest of the committee. Councillor Johnson.
I have to agree with Councillor Friedlieb that this is a position that we literally cannot move the city forward without this particular position. And I'd be curious to know what would need to be discussed to move this forward.
I was just looking at protocol for a lot of the time. Most of the time, this goes through.
I know we've spent many hours with the protocol for hiring leadership MAPE level employees, and that policy is very well defined. And I am very comfortable and will make a motion to authorize city staff to begin the process of posting for a building official starting as soon as possible.
Sure. So was that kind of a form of a motion? Motion by Councillor Johnson to move to post for the building official position within the city. Is there support for that?
I'll support.
Support by Councillor Friedlieb. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Paulson.
Mayor, I am in favor. I support the motion. I just feel like there may need to be some conversations vetted out before we go for posting. Like, is it internal, external, like how we do it normal personnel, the normal process for personnel? And then what is the job description? What are the responsibilities? If it's an independent contractor position, what are the criteria for insurance and liability, and what that might look like? I'm totally agree with the motion. I just feel like it probably needs to get vetted at the personnel committee level and then come forward.
Yes, I think, thank you, Councilor Paulson. The purpose of the motion is to move it forward. It does say in the MAPE contract that, once a position is open, we would move to post that position if it's standing. And we didn't take any vote to hold that position in abeyance. We just continue to have our current professional building official conduct this duty responsibility as he always has until we figure out what we're going to do. So by posting it now gives you the opportunity to have a meeting and look at what those criteria should be.
Could the motion maker maybe amend the motion to just allow city staff to begin the process of hiring or putting out whatever it is. So just so that we're beginning the process, but we're not actually, I think the motion is to
post for it.
To post for it.
To post for the position. Okay, thank you. I don't know, but I support moving forward to post it now and then vet it out later. But Councilor Johnson, there was a request for an amendment.
And my concern is that it is a phased retirement, and should anything happen, we would not have a building official moving forward. I don't think my motion excludes the other portion of it. I think that those conversations can happen. I just want to make sure we're moving forward towards posting as soon as possible. So maybe, Pam, if you'd read back the actual motion that you recorded, and I can let you know if that's what I'm thinking.
Pam?
Moved by Councillor Johnson, supported by Councillor Friedlieb, to allow city staff to post for the building official position as soon as possible.
I will say move forward and post.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and supported. Further discussion. I think if this does pass and we move to posting, I think there's time for personnel to meet and confer, discuss. We'll review the job description, those kinds of things before the application moves forward. It'd be pretty generic posting for that, and it'd be a good idea to be reviewing that at this point in time. I don't know how much more we can put on a building official's plate, but that would be up to personnel to determine. So thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I did, maybe it would be appropriate for me to bring this under other items concerned, but I did indicate that maybe we should have, if you do have a personnel committee, I would like to see the finance clerk 3 position added to your discussion.
Finance clerk 3.
I would like to see the finance clerk position 3 be part of your discussion at your next personnel committee meeting. That's all. No motion or anything, just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 14 is the vacancy in the fire marshal position. We did hold internal interviews yesterday, and if the chief or the deputy chief want to come up and talk about our interviews and our recommendation forward.
Well, it looks like you already have interviews set for Monday, September 16th.
That is,
welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm saddened to report that our Fire Marshal, Jay Keel, has submitted his letter of resignation. He did so at the end of last month. He gave us about a month notice, which we're very thankful that he did that. We did an expedited internal posting. We had an applicant, qualified applicant. We held an interview, as the Mayor just said, yesterday, and looking to move him immediately just to capitalize on that extended notice Jake gave us, so there's more overlap and less of a smoother transition.
So does a domino effect come into play here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council?
And
Councilor Freely.
Thank you. So the person interviewed is certified, qualified to be a fire marshal?
Yep, 8-year member, engineer, Mario Del Greco, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I will move to authorize staff to do what's necessary to approve this at the Tuesday night meeting.
Moved by Councilor Johnson. Is there support? By Councilor
Support.
Councilor Paulson. Further discussion? Have anything, Sherry?
It's my understanding he's not a fire marshal yet. He's going to have to be sent to training.
Correct. On the posting, we did come up with a list of must be able to obtain, those very specific job duties or training certifications, et cetera. Yeah. He does not have them yet.
So the purpose is to do it internally as opposed to finding an external candidate that's already have all those credentials, correct?
That would potentially.
Yeah, so we're doing internal, and then if nothing, then it would go external. So thank you very much for that. Councilor Freely.
Do you know what the time frame would be for him to acquire that additional education?
We didn't place a time frame on it. Deputy Chief Jonason just pulled it up. There's a January, February, and March option, fully paid by the National Fire Academy. So hopefully one of those.
Very good, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Assistant Chief Jonason. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 15 is the recommendation regarding the RFP for the concessionaire services, and I'm going to turn this over to our attorney, actually.
Okay, Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Brett and I have had some conversations about the concessionaires. And at this point, what I would suggest to the council is, while we're getting close, I don't think we're quite ready. We would ask for a little bit of additional time to have some additional conversations before we take any formal action on this item.
Okay. What would the proper thing? We just move the table for additional information?
I think it would.
Thank you. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you. Brian, could you maybe give us a little, like what kind of time frame? Like how long?
Brian?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think it could be ready by next week.
Oh,
It's,
okay,
I mean, it's
that's
not,
fast.
it's not an extended period of time. There's just some housekeeping to do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So if that's the case, then we can do that. Can we table it to the council meeting? And then we can make it out then? Okay.
I'll make the motion to table it till the next council meeting.
Okay, Councilor Motley moves the table. Is there support? By Councilor Freelieb. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And item number 16 is the draft policy regarding public engagement at city meetings.
And, this is born out of some discussions with staff, employees, et cetera. And I think that This is kind of a two-pronged approach. This is the first with respect to the public. I would like to see, and I ask that these be put on there, I'd like to see us have some kind of a public engagement draft policy for all of us to review, and that will be inclusive into the public forum, both at the committee of the whole meeting and at the city council meeting. Although the public does have the opportunity to speak and air their grievances and ask questions, which is very appropriate for us to do, to hear from the public. That's a big part of free speech and the ability to, but it's when somebody from the general public comes in, or anybody else, and insults and disparages and accuses without fact or figures some of the ongoing work of our staff. So I think that's important for us to be trying to just to caution everybody to maintain a professional decorum while they're up at the podium. If they have any specific concerns or comments, to express those concerns and comments and give us the opportunity to vet and understand and answer and research those questions, as opposed to just vilifying a department head or an employee for allegedly not doing their work, which I think that's important for us to do that. Our employees work really hard, the department heads as well, and so they're just doing their job in as professional manner as they can. And any concerns from the public with association to this would be a question about a specific thing that we can get an answer to, but not to disparage our staff in that regard. So it's just a caution to continue to do so. And so it's behaviors that other city councils throughout the United States do. If things get out of hand and those disparaging comments and accusations come forth or threats, then your time is automatically forfeited. So I think we don't have that issue up to that point yet. We want to make sure that's not going to happen. There have been some citizens have been very visceral about certain things, and so we just ask that we maintain a professional decorum. So I'm asking that we take a look at a draft policy for the public engagement at city meetings. So I'll open that up. Councilor Johnson, and then over to Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we should have some definitions in here when it says city council meetings. I know we differentiate between a city council meeting and a committee of the whole meeting. So I'd like to see some of those trigger words defined as meetings or any as a specific as we're going through here. I also think I see that there's the 5-minute mark in here, and I know we have 5 and 10. I'd like to see us invest in a legitimate stopwatch read, so we can have, people can know how much time they have left. Well, but as a high school speech coach, having some warnings and having that visual could be very beneficial to our folks in the committee room, knowing how much time they have left, and then that can be controlled by the clerk with a simple switch. Those are my 2 comments as we're doing this. I am going to look it over a little better, and I do want to make sure that people are still heard and that we are not limiting access to our committee meetings by any means. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you, and I agree with that, but I'm happy to see this policy, public participation in meetings, public forums, and keeping it all controlled. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you. It's a direct result of a collaborative and a concern, and it's a two-way street too as well. So well, thanks for taking a look at that. We'll vet it out a little bit further, try to fine-tune this, and then probably make that inclusive in as a disclaimer information on all our public meetings. So thank you for that and for taking a look at that policy. So. Okay, that's all. Any other questions about that? Councilor Johnson.
I have another item of concern when it's...
Yes, please. Other item of concern, then we have one more after that.
Thank you, Mayor. Brett, would it be possible, I saw that you just met with Dr. Schmidt, would it be possible to get some information about the playground in the area around North Star Elementary and what that looks like on a school day, when it looks like after school on a weekend? I've had multiple parents come to me with some concerns, and I know it's a school board issue, but it also is a public area, so I'd like to get some written clarification from the school as to when can people walk through the center of the school if it's available, those kinds of things, just so that the general public has a awareness of what our liability is, what the school's liability is, and what parents need to do to ensure that their children are being safe. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councilor Freely.
And I would just dovetail onto that, like, you know, our city park closes at 10 p.m. I would like to request to the school that the playground closes at 10 p.m. as well. That would be helpful for the residents.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else in that regard? I have one other item of concern, and I will refer to the council if they have any others. An added item on the agenda, which is item number 17 by staff, is approve the one-day transit merchant license for Chad Yost, doing business as Chad's Meat Wagon.
So moved.
By Councilor, move to approve by Councilor Johnson, and support by Councilor Beyondich. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else to come before the committee of the whole meeting today? Anything from the rest of the council? Anything from staff? Okay, thank you very much that was a long meeting and a very productive one, I think. So we will stand adjourned. It's 11:16 a.m. Have a great day, everybody. We are adjourned.